In a nation rebuilding from war and political upheaval, a dark chapter unfolds behind the closed doors of a little-known state-run welfare facility. Dubbed Korea's Auschwitz by some, the brothers' home in 1970s to 1980s Busan was a brutal playground of abuse, forced labor, and corruption, where vulnerable children and the poor were exploited under the guise of rehabilitation. How did this all come to be, and how was it able to persist for so long without outside pressure? And is there any truth to the claim that this labyrinth of corruption, brutality, and scandals inspired the dystopian setting and premise of Netflix's Squid Game? Let's find out right now on a particularly bittersweet episode of Red Thread. Oh, it hurts. Isaiah, why is this episode in particular so bittersweet, even just beyond the horrible content that we're about to endure?
Yeah, so as horrible as the information about children going on to inspire TV shows about murder, it is also bittersweet because I am sad to announce that this is my final episode as a primary host of the Red Thread, as a lead host. I'll certainly be back on for guest spots in the future, but this is my last time as a host of this show. So that's why it's bittersweet, Jackson. It is very sad. It is very sad.
Very, very sad.
Reason being, as you've probably noticed, dear viewer, I have been very touch and go as of late. There's a bunch of stuff in real life. My wife and I bought a house, so I'm flying back and forth a lot to get everything in order there. I'm starting up a bunch of new projects, but some stuff you guys know about, some stuff I haven't announced yet. And it is really causing a strain on when I can record and how often I can record and stuff like that. So things have been tumultuous over on Creepcast as well, I assure you. But we've been working out the corners there. But it's obvious that on this show I have been holding it back to some large degree. And that's unfair to you guys. That's unfair to Jackson. So I'm stepping away. I have greatly enjoyed my time here, greatly enjoyed being a part of the show, and am very proud of what we've put together. But yeah, I'm happy for what we did, but it's also very sad to go. But it is what's best for the show. Bittersweet, like you said. Yeah.
No bad blood or anything. And like you said, with the whole element of timing being very difficult, scheduling being very difficult, I think we got to remember as well that I'm Australian, which is a cursed word in this podcast history. But it also means that just in terms of scheduling, it becomes a whole lot harder to nail down times that work across the board for both of us. Yeah. Right now, you're recording. Just as an example of the scheduling difficulty, right now you're recording from a hotel room at, I think it's 9 a.m. your time.
Yes,
in some town in Indiana, I think you said, or some state. You're traveling at the moment.
Yeah.
And it is currently 1 a.m. for me on a Saturday morning technically now. So yeah, it's just very difficult to make scheduling work for this.
It's rough because a lot of the time, on Creepcast especially, I'll push stuff off and do that. But at least Hunter and I are in the same time zone to where it's okay, we can both do 7 p.m. or something like that. But for you, that's 4 a.m. or something.
Yeah.
It's so
during the day, during your day, you're always obviously focused on a lot of your other projects that require the cooperation with your collaborative members of your projects, like your channel and your secondary channel, things like that. Mm-hmm. So I can't really take up time during your actual days when we're both kind of awake. So it has to be at those extreme ends of the days, and it's not feasible. We also have a team of extended people here that are working behind the scenes to make sure that Red Thread happens, and it's also unfair to them to then have to delay episodes constantly to give them smaller amount of time to edit the show, things like that.
There's been a couple times where it's okay, I can't record until this time, and Jackson's been that would give the editors 10 hours to get it edited, and it's like, oh well, you know better do something else, because that's unfair to put that on them. And it's also like, what happens sometimes is I'll be like up late all night to get a recording done, and then it's like, okay, tomorrow I can push stuff back, but in order to record Red Thread again, because Jackson's in Australia, I have to get a couple hours of sleep, then be up early the next morning to record. And there's one episode, I don't even think you know about this, Jackson. There's one episode recently where I fell asleep during a recording. Like, because I was running on like
Red Thread recording?
A Red Thread recording, yeah. Because I was on like, I'd been up, it was like 48 hours straight of getting stuff done. I'd only slept a couple hours, then had to record Red Thread to like, our one existing time slot. And I fell asleep for a moment, then like woke myself back up. And I remember thinking like, okay, I've got to, this is unfair. Like to bring this energy to the show is a bad thing. So I would rather go out on a high note than continue to continue to hurt the show and the people working on it. So my apologies to the fans and everyone. Thank you all for being here. And of course to you, Jackson, it means the world. But yeah, it is best for the show at this time if I step away, I feel.
Step back. And again, there's no bad blood between us, the show, anything like that. Isaiah, you're definitely going to come back to guest in some episodes later on, of course.
The JFK files are out now. You can't keep me off those,
we got to tackle that again. So it's not like you're going away forever. I'm hoping that this change, obviously it's going to be a bit of a difficult one for people to swallow, considering a lot of people came here specifically for Isaiah, but I'm going to keep going. We're going to have different people on different topics. We're going to keep doing Red Thread things each week to make sure that people who like Red Thread still have content that they can enjoy through Spotify and things like that, as well as the YouTube channel.
It also, like, just to speak, like, frankly about it, like, I know a lot of people came to the channel for me and stuff like that, but what this channel is, or what the show is, these interesting historical facts cases and stuff like that. And me being here half the time and then being half awake when I am here a lot of the time, it just puts a drag on that. So, and it creates a roof to where it can only do so well as long as I'm still like half-heartedly in it. Whereas if Jackson takes the show and then is able to put host who he engages with, he vibes with, and can build out better topics, better stories, it can go so much higher. So again, I hope you guys, even if you came for me, I hope you stick around to support the show, because it certainly deserves it, and it can only go up from here. So I'm
give it a chance. If you don't like it, then you can bounce off. That's totally fine. But give it a chance in the future. I'm sure we'll still be able to delight and entertain you. Definitely not this week though, because this week is very sad. Yes, so I'm going to start this by warning everyone that this story, the story of South Korea's brother's home, is a horrific story indeed, and it contains mentions of sexual assault, abuse, torture, and death, including to minors, children. So it is a very tragic story.
What a great topic. What a great
by Isaiah. I don't know what the audience does to us, but this came heavily requested by our Patreon and official.men members, like heavily requested, specifically because they wanted us to dive into if this did have any validity in terms of inspiring Squid Game eventually. But in order to understand that whole conspiracy theory, we still have to understand and discuss the actual brother's home, which we will do so now, but not before we hear from the sponsors of this episode who keep the lights on and keep the lights red. Over to them. You can't put off doctor's visits. Lord knows I've tried myself, but I just recently went to the doctors for my frequent migraines, and it was like a band-aid had been ripped off. Like, at least now I'm on the potential path to fixing it. I feel useful. I feel like I'm doing the right thing. But yes, booking doctor's appointments is stressful and annoying though. That much is true. Trying to figure out which one you should book and then actually doing it, it's all a stress. Luckily, the sponsor of this episode is perfect for fixing this, ZocDoc. ZocDoc is a free app and website where you can search and compare high-quality in-network doctors and click to instantly book an appointment. These doctors are in-network, and they include over 100,000 doctors across nearly every specialty you could think of: dental, eyesight, your general GPs, probably feet doctors as well if you've got any foot issues, just across the board. Think of it as a doctor dating app if you want to think of it like that, instead of you're meeting up with doctors to solve your issues instead of dating them. Probably don't think of it as a doctor dating app. In fact, think of it as just a booking app where you meet up with doctors to then discuss your problems. also known as a doctor's appointment. You're making doctor's appointments, okay? That's all you're doing. I don't know why I brought up dating. But just like dating, you can be as selective as you want. You can filter through for doctors who take your specific insurance, and you can also filter by their verified ratings that other, verified patients have given them, like their ratings. So you can make sure that your appointment is a slam dunk. Once you find the right doctor, you can see their appointment openings, choose a time that works for you, and then click to instantly book. And that's it. You just choose a time and it just works. You instantly book it. That's it. No annoying phone calls where you're put on hold. You just click and you're booked. If I'm ever sick, I'm using ZocDoc to make the bookings. It's just easier and way less stressful than calling up a receptionist who's going to put you on hold. So stop putting off those appointments and go to ZocDoc.com/redthread to find and instantly book a top-rated doctor today. That's ZocDoc.com/redthread, ZocDoc.com/redthread. Links below in the description. Thank you to ZocDoc for keeping everyone healthy and for supporting the show. And thank you for listening to this and checking them out. You won't regret it. Thank you very much. And now over to me again. Oh yes, it's my favorite time of the year, the time where I get to tell you that AG1 is sponsoring this episode. And also, through my advanced research, I know that it's coming up to spring in America right now. How about that? You know what that means? The days are longer, you're doing more outdoor activities, hopefully, and the need for more energy is pervasive. What a coincidence. This is the perfect use case for a great tasting daily health drink, and you know what? What an even bigger coincidence. That's exactly what AG1 is. It's the health drink that supports your immune system, boosts your energy levels, supports your gut health, supports your nervous system, and even your skin health. Talk about being an all-in-one package. It does all of this magical stuff by being packed full of 75 different vitamins, minerals, and whole food sourced items that are all designed to make sure that you wake up every morning feeling the best that you can feel. And it's easy, and like I said before, it even tastes great. You just put a teaspoon of AG1 into your cold water, stir it around for a few seconds, and then slurp it back like it's some slurp juice in Fortnite, and you're ready for the day. I don't even play Fortnite. I don't know why that came to my mind. Healthy habits create healthy bodies, and AG1 is the perfect staple for a healthy start to your day. And hey, it gets even better. AG1 is offering new subscribers a free $76 gift when you sign up. You'll get a welcome kit, a bottle of D3K2, and 5 free travel packs in your first box. So make sure to check out drinkag1.com/redthread to get this offer. That's drinkag1.com/redthread to start your new year on a healthier note. Go check them out. We love them here on Red Thread. I love them in general. They're great, and they have made a huge difference in my life, as well as everyone in my family who's tried them. They love them as well. We stand by AG1. Please go check them out. Thank you for watching this episode's ad slots. And now, back to the episode. And now, back in. Thank you very much to the sponsors. Really do appreciate it. Thank you for checking out the sponsors if you do so. Isaiah, have you heard of Brothers Home at all?
I remember when Squid Games came out, I remember a few people being like, oh, was it based off of the thing that happened in South Korea, like the boys' home? But I've never looked into it any more than that because I assume they were lying. But that, as far as I know, is my only knowledge of it. I imagine, having seen Squid Games, that whatever happened at this boy home was not good. I've got to quit doing the Squid Games comparison because people are going to be expecting that this is a case of child abuse and neglect.
Yeah,
not a game show.
It's not like Squid Game at all. Beyond just like forced imprisonment, kind of like just some general vibes.
The only thing I know about it, though, is people mention it in relation to Squid Games. That's what I meant by bringing that up. That was my only. Yeah.
I'm always extremely surprised whenever I hear about something of this magnitude from a different country, something this tragic. Like this is, I mean, Korea's Auschwitz is not underselling it, honestly. This is like a grand scale of loss of life. And I had never heard of it before this. And it's just kind of, it's always mind-blowing that whenever something this modern and this tragic enters my brain for the first time and I've never heard of it before, I'm like, how have I never heard of it before? This was horrible. This was horrible to research for everyone listening. Like, I watched the documentary on this in the research process and the editing process of this document. I genuinely cried. It was that bad. I'm not like playing this up or anything. It was heartbreaking hearing the testimony from the people involved or the people who survived these events. It was genuinely heartbreaking. I think it's the first time I've cried in Red Thread history. It was crazy. Absolutely crazy that I'd never heard of this.
What an optimistic look for this episode. I can't wait to get into whatever this is.
I'm glad this it's a rite of passage. Didn't we send Caleb off on an equally depressing subject now that I think
Hold
about
on, let me go look what his last episode was. I can't remember.
It might actually have been like an equally depressing thing. This is our goodbye tradition, I guess.
Yeah, you have to get
and torture.
What was Charlie's? Hold on.
Yeah,
okay,
I don't know what
so the last one with Caleb was the West Memphis 3.
Okay, so
another child
very sad
murder one. And the last one with Charlie was hold on.
I feel like Charlie's might have. Remember that book episode that we did where he just spent the entire time ripping on the book? I think it was the Voynich manuscript. Yeah, he might have got so angry about that one that he just left the show after that.
Okay, no, last one we did with him was the Chupacabra.
Oh, well, that's friendly. Yeah, that's not
that's
sad.
Okay. That's fine. Yeah, is that right? Yes. And then the Voynich manuscript was a couple before that. Yeah, so it goes Voynich manuscript, then Cicada.
We have to get Charlie back on for one final episode where we like
to make it traumatic.
Yeah, to make it as traumatic as possible.
So he did the Chupacabra one, and then that was his last one. Yes, okay. And then the first one Caleb did was Circleville Letters, but we sent Caleb off on a killer, and now we're sending me off on this one. So that's great. That's awesome.
You're welcome. No, like I said, I didn't plan it this way. The way that the research and editing process works, we have to choose these pretty far out to give the team time to like research all this as diligently as they can. So we chose this topic like 6-7 days ago. And that was before we knew that this was going to be your final episode as well. But on top of that, like the Squid Game Association and things like that, I thought going in that it was just going to be a pretty dumb topic generally. But after reading into it, man, I do wish we chose something different for your final time. So I do sincerely apologize, Isaiah, but it was too late to pivot.
Yeah, I wouldn't, honestly, Jackson, I wouldn't have it any other way.
I'm glad. It's definitely a memorable way of going out, I guess.
It is.
Get those tissues
something
ready.
All right.
All right.
No.
So
right,
do you want to? Yeah, you can set the scene. So to set before we talk about Brothers Home, we need to set the scene of South Korea at the time during the 1960s, 70s, and 80s because it plays a pivotal role in how this kind of monstrosity was able to exist in the first place.
Yes. So at the time of the Brothers Home conception, South Korea was ruled by President Park Chung-hee, a very controversial politician. Park came into power after organizing the infamous May 16th coup in 1961. Park, popular at the time, and his allies created the Military Revolutionary Committee and overthrew the civilian government of President Yun Po-son and the Prime Minister Chang Myon, thus ending the Second Republic, which they saw as weak. Supporters of the coup saw the democratic institutions as struggling to address the issues South Korea was suffering with post-Korean War, like economic instability, unemployment, and more, and they argued that this decisive coup was necessary to stabilize the post-war nation.
Yeah, so they were coming off the Korean War, basically, and, South Korea. I mean, it's the longest running war, right? It's still technically in process.
Maybe not in history, because there's like the 100-Year War and stuff like that.
Yeah, sorry, I should have clarified. Modern history.
Modern history, yes, I would say, yeah. Because did they declare peace? Or did they have peace talks?
It's just I'm pretty sure it's a stalemate. Or what did they call it? A ceasefire. I'm pretty sure it's a ceasefire.
Okay, so that's what it was. They had a ceasefire. Yeah. Okay, so I look up what is the longest war in history. The Reconquista, a period spanning from 711 to 1492. That's 781
insane.
years.
That's 8 generations of people at war. What was that over?
It was Christian kingdom's gradual. Hold on, this is the stupid AI thing they put at the top of the page.
Yeah.
Okay, it seems like I'm looking on, what is this website? BYJUS, whatever that is.
I don't know what it is, but it's reputable.
It was the expansion of Christian kingdoms through Hispania, and it ended with the fall of the Nasrid Kingdom of Granada in 1492. So it seems like this was a religious war of Christians against Islam, I think. Whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what history. Anyway, yes, longer than the Korean War.
They really dragged their feet over that one. Jeez. Sped it up.
No, both sides for generations were like, no. There's one article that's titled 7 Wars in Human History that lasted over 100 years. So yeah, we like to fight each other a lot.
Yeah.
But in modern history, the Korean War is certainly the longest ongoing, or the longest that we remember. So yeah.
Yes, and it's also the reason we talk about this right now is because South Korea came out of this situation in a period of extreme economic destabilization. They definitely didn't recover gracefully post separation from when Korea split into two. Like you think of South Korea and North Korea as being entirely different in terms of economic power. That's only necessarily true in like our modern era. Back in the 60s and 70s, they were definitely struggling pretty hard.
Yeah. And also Park, the leader, came from a successful coup. So he was effectively a successful revolutionary against the standing Korean government.
Mm-hmm.
Park Chung-hee declared the coup a victory the morning of May 16th and established military rule through the junta called the Supreme Council for National Reconstruction, or the SCNR. In the aftermath of the coup, the SCNR served as the central governing body and consolidated power by suspending democratic institutions. They always do that. It's always like, you can
it's
vote
weird
later.
How that happens, huh?
You can pick what happens later, just not right now.
Why isn't there ever a coup that's like, and now you can vote immediately?
Yeah. That's like no cool what well, I guess they tried that in like South America and stuff like that a lot, but the leader who comes in always like, oh, look at that, all the votes are for me. Isn't that suspicious? Anyway. Or it's kind of like in communist revolutions, how there's always the vanguard party. It's like, no, we're just taking power so that when we win, we give it back. And then when they win, it's like, well, we haven't won yet. We still have.
Yeah, they get to define what winning is, sadly.
Yeah, we haven't won per se. Yeah.
South Korea, though, going through their history, it is shocking. It seems like they have a coup, an internal coup, or one of their main leaders is arrested and jailed probably every 5 years at this point.
They had one like a few months ago, right? Yeah.
Still to this day. It's just a way of life there, it seems. Like, yeah, crazy.
Political parties were dissolved due to martial law. And in 1963, Park ran for America.
That was just a random American guy that entered South Korea and decided to rule. Go Mark!
The Mark Revolution.
Yeah. Just one guy.
Hi, it's me, Mark. In 1963, Park ran for president as a member of the newly created Democratic Republican Party, winning in what has been viewed as an unfair election against former President Yoon. He is often described as a dictator who acted in an authoritarian manner.
I love the idea of performing a coup and then immediately forming a party called the Democratic Republican Party.
Well, they do that. They do that all the time, especially if you look at like African conflicts and stuff like that. The people who always take over are called like the People's Liberation, or like the Army of People's Freedom, or whatever. And it's like, well, the Army of the Civil Rights of all people under God decided to have public beheadings in the town center. It's always like
what the people
wanted. Violent things committed by everyone who sounds like, oh, the peace group, the squad of love.
They know like for the coup to be successful and their rule to be successful, they still need the people's support. Yeah.
Or you need to at least appear under the guise that you're trying to do something well to like the UN, so they don't send in like attack helicopters.
You think in those situations there's like a board, not a boardroom, but like a meeting where like some college degree marketing dudes like, we got to call it the People's Democratic Revolution Party or whatever. It's gonna do way better than any other name.
It's going to do way better than the dictator's suggestion of the squad of child killers supreme.
The extreme death cult.
Unholy death fire was voted down.
We're just gonna soften that name around the edges. We'll still keep the identity there, but we just.
You know what? People's Republic. I like it. We'll go with that.
Yeah.
So in 1963, he ran for president as a member of the Democratic Republican Party, winning in what has been viewed as an unfair election. He is often described as a dictator who acted in an authoritarian manner. Park also declared another self-coup in 1972 after declaring martial law, where he then ruled as dictator for several years. He remained the president until 1979, when he was assassinated on October 26th by his close friend Kim Jae-gai, who was the director of the KCIA, following extensive public demonstrations against Park Chung-hee. Wait, so is the KCIA just the Korean CIA?
It's exactly what you think it is, yes.
The Korean Central
very
Intelligence
original.
Agency?
Yep.
The KCIA, that's so funny. So the director of the CIA killed the president? That's insane.
Whoa. And his friend, he was his close friend too.
That's wild. What the heck? Okay.
Yeah, no honor in South Korea. Also, the K stands for cool, by the way, not Korea. It's the cool Central Intelligence Agency.
Could you imagine if what's his name? If Edgar
Kash
Hoover
Patel
just shot JFK?
Oh, just right now, like the CIA, Kash Patel, he's the head of the CIA currently. Imagine him just like actually just assassinating the president. That'd be
crazy. Yeah, that'd be wild.
It would be certainly one for the history books.
It would be a moment, to be sure.
Yeah.
Opinions of Park in South Korea are divided, often depending on age, with the older generation giving him more credit for his building of an economic foundation and protection against North Korea. There are strong opinions on the other side, which is expected when talking about someone who has conducted several coups. This article on Quora details that South Koreans hate Park for being a dictator, seizing power, and suppressing those who oppress him. They describe this period of South Korean history as a scar.
And for audio listeners, we'll obviously have visual stuff on screen for the YouTube people at the moment throughout this episode. So if you ever hear us talking about something visual, then just head on over to the YouTube video when you're safe to do so to see those visual assets.
Yeah. Regardless and important to the setting of this story, one of Park's central focuses during his multi-decade regime was on the streets. He wanted to cleanse society of vagrants. Oh no. This is the kind of language they all use. Oh no.
Yeah, that's not good.
It's like by giving them... Oh, so you want to give them houses, right? By giving them houses, right?
Yeah. By helping them out, by giving them like actual social welfare.
Yeah.
The most recent one was Duterte, right?
That's funny. You have like two people like both thumbs up, like want to eradicate homelessness, but they're like
different ideas of how to.
But yeah, by giving them homes, right? He wanted to remove poverty from his society, and thus the beginning of detention housing centers for the vagrants began in the 1960s. This came alongside the Social Welfare Acts, which was designed and implemented to ensure vagrants that were aged between 18 to 65 had access to social welfare services. And I guess if you're over 65, they just kill you. Is that
the implication? I guess kids aren't kids don't need social welfare ever.
I assume it's saying if you're under 18, the program assumes you're with an adult, I guess.
Yeah, but I feel like kids are still the ones that probably need welfare the most if they're in a bad...
I don't know. I'm assuming like the program applies to adults. It's like, and if you have kids, they're included.
Yeah, probably.
I think that would mean.
Or there might be a different act that deals specifically with children.
With children, yeah. This need to purify, quote, the streets only intensified throughout the years as South Korea began to prepare for the 1986 Asian Games and the 1988 Olympics that was to take place in Seoul, and they desperately wanted to shed the appearance of a war-torn and poverty-stricken country in the aftermath of the Korean War. I was going to say where I'm down in New Orleans a lot. There is, so like when the Taylor Swift concert was in the New Orleans Superdome, and like when the Super Bowl was there and stuff like that, there's a ton of homeless people who always live around like the Superdome area. So before Taylor Swift got there, I guess the police just made them leave so they wouldn't be around the area that there's going to be a bunch of traffic.
Yeah, wouldn't want to depress happy people with your homelessness.
Exactly. We don't want all these Swifties to think about homelessness and poverty on the way to, see Swift perform.
I've heard stories about like different cities in America basically just shuffling the homeless people out of the city whenever like foreign dignitaries show up, and they want to make sure that the cities look good to these foreign dignitaries.
Yes, yeah, they'll just tell them to go somewhere else. So it's a method to tell if something's going on in the city. If on the streets near the edge of the city you see more homeless people than usual, because it's like, oh, they made them leave, like the Superdome area. Apparently, like the street sweepers that go by would just like spray people if they didn't leave. Like,
oh my god.
Yeah, it's pretty rough. It's like comedically awful.
It's inhumane, yeah.
Yeah. It's
I mean,
really
something has to be done to help the homeless people. Like, you're not helping the situation by doing that at all.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Yeah, it's pretty messed up. You were going to say something before I said that.
Yes, I was going to say, like, you always hear about this with like wherever the Olympics goes, especially if they're not, traditional first world countries. If the Olympics goes somewhere, and the FIFA World Cup, for example, and they build new stadiums and stuff, in a lot of these countries they use like slave labor to do that, and it's like a sad idea that these events that are enjoyed by millions of people in first world countries are usually developed and built off the backs of less fortunate people. Very sad.
Yeah, they have to set it up in such a way that it is it has the appearance everyone else does, right?
Yeah.
Even if it's in a region where like, there's problems, like, well, we have to be on the same standard. But I would consider South Korea certainly like a first world country, at least now, but right after the Korean War, like they were certainly in a rough spot.
Yeah, there would have been a lot of homeless people in the aftermath of a war that is still technically going. Then a lot of people were less fortunate. The economy itself was in shambles, and people weren't doing so well.
Yeah, they're
even
not doing
with the support of the United States. Even today, it is a first world country. It has developed, but there is still a lot of very apparent class imbalances in South Korea. Not to popular media you. Well, it is your last episode, so I will. But Parasite, the movie Parasite, deals with that pretty heavily. So, and it's prevalent in a lot of South Korean media, even Squid Game, about this massive imbalance between the poorest of the country and the most wealthy. It's definitely something that has persisted throughout the decades, even to I would say like a larger degree than like the United States, for example.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's tragic, to be sure.
Yeah.
The titular brothers' home, located in the Butte district of Busan, now known as the Saesang district, was originally formed in 1960 as an orphanage originally called Brothers Orphanage, and it was said to be designed to provide shelter and care for those orphaned after the Korean War. It exploded in size in the early 70s as it transformed into an accommodation for general vagrants as opposed to just orphans. It was then finally fully converted into the official welfare facility called Brothers Home in 1975 after signing a contract with the city of Busan to be converted into a vagrant detention facility.
Right, so it started off as an orphanage. There's not a lot of information known about the orphanage aspect of it originally, before it was eventually then taken over in 1975 and converted into this official welfare facility.
Individuals brought into the facilities were meant to learn skills and then be released back into the public, better equipped for a more successful life on the outside. I'm sure that's exactly what happened and nothing else.
Yeah, that's always the advertising for
It's always what happens.
all of these,
We're gonna help you.
facilities. Yeah, it's going to be great for you. It's a holiday destination. You're going to learn the skills necessary to survive out there.
Just like how in the 30s they were like, just take your mentally ill cousin and put them in our vacation home.
Lobotomies are great for you.
You'll have friends, yeah. What was the thing they used to say that to women they would give lobotomies? There was a resort by the lake or by the sea. Or they say something like a lakefront. There was a phrase that was like, oh, send her to a waterfront facility, lakefront vacation, something like that. And it was always like, yeah, they'd go there and get lobotomized. That was what would happen.
It's like one saying away from just saying send her upstate to the farm upstate.
The butterfly farm, yeah. Oh, she's so peaceful now. She's so calm and passive. Yeah. Aunt Mabel's doing great. Yeah.
Jesus Christ.
These facilities were subsidized by the government as it was officially designated as a welfare institution. It was funded by the South Korean government to cover basic necessities such as food, maintenance, and care services, and was channeled through provisions in the Social Welfare Services Act. Funds were allocated based on the number of residents rather than on demonstrated needs, and there was largely no oversight.
How could this go wrong?
How could it go wrong? It's literally never has it gone wrong before, Jackson. No, not even once.
Never. Okay, so now I will kind of go over the hierarchy of the brothers' home, especially after 1975 when it became that welfare facility. These are the heavy hitters or the main kind of administration folk that comprised brothers' home. The ones mostly responsible for what happened at brothers' home. So we start with the director. At the top was a man named Park In-kuen. I believe it's pronounced In-kuen, sometimes written as Park In-juen. He had retired from the military and was a Christian social worker with a bit of a holier-than-thou attitude. He was also a former boxer. And according to an article in the Asia Pacific Journal, the city of Busan handed him the reins to the brothers' home in 1975 during its original transformation. So again, he wasn't there preceding that. He signed up to basically take administration of this faltering orphanage, and he was the one that spearheaded the conversion into brothers' home. He was chosen because he was seen as a figure capable of imposing strict discipline and order due to his military career and his social work. So yeah, he portrayed himself as, a good Christian guy with a strong discipline and work ethic and wanted to make a positive change.
I don't like where this is going.
No, sadly, this is not a good representation of, Christianity. They obviously evil people co-opt religion for a multitude of reasons.
No, we're all like situations. That. We're all like that, actually. we're all very violent, and yeah.
Don't worry, you can still come out against him. You can still say we're not all like that.
We'll see.
I'm not going to jump ahead on it. There were many directors of the facility, and it was a close family affair overall, including Park In-kuen's wife, Lim Sung-soon, his brother-in-law, and their children. Lim Young-soon, his brother-in-law, became the facility's pastor and was directly involved in the operations of the center. So again, religion was certainly a central theme of the facility. They had a giant church, I think, off to the perimeter, but it was enormous. Again, all of these facilities were built by the people there who were taken into brothers' home. So they built this church with their own hands. Religion was definitely a central part, and that's where this pastor comes into play. There were also individuals within the hierarchy that were called platoon leaders. Platoons were used to organize residents as the facility adopted a military-style structure. And these platoon leaders were trusted members of the institution's population that were given additional responsibilities and also privileges. And as a bit of foreshadowing, let's call it, they were allowed and encouraged to use physical violence against their peers or the people that they were meant to be leading in these platoons. The facility was divided into platoons of about 120 inmates each, and within these groups, certain individuals were designated as platoon leaders, And below the platoon leaders, there were roughly 3,500 to 4,000 individuals that made up the facility's main population. There's some sources suggest that the actual number could have been far, far higher. A lot of the records obviously weren't well kept, and a lot of the more illegal aspects of this operation, of which there were many, obviously weren't documented because they were hiding these things. So certainly that number is probably way higher.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's awesome. That's great. That's so cool. Abuse within the home. Yay. All right, so. In 1975, the South Korean Ministry of Home Affairs announced the Directive Number 410. This directive meant that police departments were instructed to form specific patrol teams to find vagrants within the community in order to rehouse them in these rehabilitation centers, of which there were many that were formed across the cities, none larger than Brothers Home. The definition of vagrant was vague, as it was defined as someone who, quote, prevented a healthy social order in cities and society, end quote. This allowed police to determine themselves who they considered a vagrant. Very quickly, those targeted began to include people who weren't homeless, but were instead walking the street alone or awaiting family at places like bus stops, who were then taken without their guardians knowing.
Yeah.
Man, it would be bad enough if it was just homeless people, but the fact that they were also abducting people, I mean, it was abductions
they were literally
but they were abducting non-homeless, like anyone was a target, yeah.
This could have been a positive thing. Like, they could have actually taken in homeless people and given them the social welfare system that the government was meant to be spending their money on. Like, it could have.
His mindset wasn't like, we could try to help them. It's, we're going to get rid of them. It was a completely different. Yeah. It's not like, the modern. It's eradication. Yeah, it's not conversion. It's eradication. And even if it was conversion, like, it's not a passive one. It's not like the facilities will be there if they want it. It's like, no, they will be there.
It's
but then you're also just abducting like people who have a home. So it, like, you're making more homeless people. And
with the homeless thing,
people from their home.
You can't even use the argument that they're just eradicating homeless people when they are directly kidnapping people with homes, like people who are actual members of society. And again, this isn't. It might not have been something that was pushed by the government itself, but the government was certainly creating the scenario where this was encouraged by. As we previously said, they were basically paying these organizations, they were paying Brothers Home per inmate or per person staying at the facility, essentially, giving them a financial incentive to kidnap as many people as possible to boost their profits.
Mm-hmm.
And there's no oversight on the government's part. Like, they didn't do any investigations to make sure that the money was going to appropriate places.
Mm-hmm. Man. Oh, boy. They were taken to facilities like Brothers Home without even attempting to find relatives of those taken, and these facilities became their prison. As we previously mentioned, these facilities were paid by the government on a per-person basis. So they were financially motivated to intake as many individuals as possible, regardless of whether or not the person was genuinely homeless. The people essentially kidnapped involved beggars, disabled individuals, and alone or abandoned children. Those brought to the facility were given identification numbers and placed into their designated platoons.
So we have a picture right here as well from an Al Jazeera article of children being brought by truck into Brothers Home. And it is literally what do you call that? A van? A truck. It's a truck just filled to the brim with children just being piled out into this facility.
Man.
Actually, and most of those children probably had, homes. To go back to, they were kidnapped. It just
the description beneath it says, according to this article written by Al Jazeera, fewer than 10% of inmates within the Brothers Home were actually vagrants. What? 90% of the people were just abducted? Oh man.
Well, did South Korea run out of homeless people as well?
Yeah, you would say was the problem that big if you had to make up 90% of them? I thought it was an issue. I thought that's what all the fuss was about.
How much is that? 90% of 4,000 people is what?
3,600.
Yeah, 3,600.
3,600.
Yeah, that's a lot of kidnapped people.
Yeah, that's
that
ridiculous.
is. Oh man, that's to think about that. That is actually mind-boggling. Well, I mean, they were all kidnapped, even the homeless people.
So in total, there were 400 homeless people. That's what caused all the fuss. Yeah, what the man?
That's so many people that are taken off the streets, like through kidnapping.
Oh man. This was investigated in 1987 by a Busan prosecutor named Kim Yong-won. In the beginning, the brothers' home was small and prisoners slept in tents. The expansion of the facility was built by the children and prisoners there. They were forced into manual labor, carrying rocks, concrete, and heavy materials to build the home itself. This, I see now where the comparison to like people calling this the Korean Auschwitz, because this is very like a
it feels
labor camp.
like a concentration
camp.
Yeah, or a labor camp, definitely. And a lot of the pictures from this early period, like there are genuine photos of this time period where children as young as like 5 or 6 like walking up precarious wooden built ramparts and things like that with like stones on their backs. It's horrifying imagery of these children being forced to do extreme manual labor building these buildings and stuff.
Every morning was an early start. Prisoners were woken before 5:30 a.m. because at that time a religious message would play through the loudspeakers in every room. Prisoners had to sit beside their freshly made bed, which they had under 5 seconds to make, and were made to listen intently. Punishments were severe for those who didn't perform their duties diligently.
I don't think I could. I don't think I could make my bed in 5 seconds. That's not possible.
No, does that mean just like you have to have the pillow made and throw the blanket across it?
Make it roughly neat, I guess.
Yeah. What's the there is I think it was a boot camp I heard about where like the drill sergeant would like throw a nickel on the bed, and if the nickel didn't bounce, like the bed wasn't made enough. It's like the sheets had to be tied. I don't think they're like talking that level of being made, but yeah. Regardless.
Well, again, the head of this facility was a ex-military guy.
Yeah, so. I mean, maybe it was at intense. Who knows?
Very military-esque.
They were running on almost no food. The food they did receive was usually rotten and almost inedible. Most of the prisoners were severely malnourished. Hygiene was almost non-existent. Many survivors have attested to the fact that lice were rampant in the building. There were factories within the home where the prisoners were forced to make items such as fishing line, shoes, clothing, cocktail umbrellas, and more. Cocktail umbrellas and more. They also had to perform metal and woodwork. They were not paid for any work they did, and the facility instead pocketed the profit. This was essentially prison-style labor. Yep.
Yeah.
Disguised as part of the facility building, the learning skills in the prisoner to help reintegrate them back into society. The labor the prisoners did on a daily basis was simply part of the big money-making machine that was Brothers Home. This money was pocketed by the institution owners, on top of them already being paid subsidies by the government's Social Welfare Services Act.
Yeah. So again, remember, the government is paying this facility and its administration via the Social Welfare Services Act per person that they brought in, and still these people are not even given the bare necessities of food, proper hygiene, proper, water, proper healthcare or anything like that would, facilitate that social welfare. Instead, it's being entirely pocketed and embezzled, as we'll get to later, by the administration.
I think it's wild how much money there is to be made if you just don't have any moral inclination.
Yes. I always think about that. We've kind of got something similar over here in Australia. Not like directly relatable to this, but there's like a national disability scheme over here, where private companies are kind of paid by the government to provide welfare services to disabled people. And a lot of the times what happens is these private companies essentially charge an insane amount of money to these disabled people because the government's paying the check, basically. So there's a lot of like corruption there they're not doing anything like this, like labor camps or anything, but there's certainly like corruption whenever you bring in these kind of unwatched, I guess, disability and welfare schemes.
Yeah.
It is crazy and very heartbreaking to me to think about how quickly immoral people will jump onto these things to make the situation worse for others, just to make their lives better.
There were daily targets that needed to be met, and if they weren't, they would endure physical violence and punishment. Physical violence was horrifically common within the brothers' home, and not simply just from the directors or guards, as even the inmates would be pressured to turn on one another for favors. The platoon leaders would abuse their power in beating others for things like not meeting targets, not making their beds quick enough, not completing tasks, or even dropping food on the floor. You were not to talk about your home outside of the prison, nor the injustice of you being imprisoned in the facility, nor ask questions about release, as this was grounds for immediate physical punishment. There are horrific testimonies of what happened to children who wet the bed, as an example of the abuse inflicted by the institution's leadership. Lim Sung-soon, the wife of the director, would forcibly pull down the pants of the children who wet the bed and put her hands on the child's private parts, where she would then pray to get rid of the devil. She used a lot of force, and this was a physically painful act, but if you reacted, you would be taken and beaten up more severely, as it would be deemed an act of defiance to the prayers. The beatings that the prisoners of all ages endured were so bad that many were beaten unconscious, many received permanent injuries, many received broken teeth, bones, or swelling so bad they were unable to see or eat for days at a time.
Also, just real quick to the bedwetting, I do remember a direct anecdotal story from this as well of an elderly woman who was also there imprisoned, who wet the bed as well, and she was taken out and basically like cleaned with a mop that they used to mop the floors, like cold water thrown over and basically mopped clean. Like just, I'm speechless. You know, I got nothing to add.
A survivor.
Yeah.
Gosh. Whew,
does it annoy
man.
you? Does it make any difference that they kind of co-opt your religion as well? Does that
of course
offend you
it
on
does.
an even?
Yeah. It always does. But I mean, history is full of people who, a lot of people will use religion as an excuse of power. That happens a lot, or they'll use it as an excuse for like violent tendencies and things. So, especially control. There's so many cult leaders and stuff like that that will use religion as a way to do that. So yeah, it bothers me. But I certainly don't consider them Christian, regardless of what they say. I mean, that's one of the biggest things that Jesus talked about, right? There will be many that testify in my name that he will never know. So I think these are examples of the wolf in sheep's clothing, but it does offend me that we... the sheep's clothing that they're using is my sheep, right? So that's annoying, but I don't. I know what they are. A survivor, Kang Shin-woo, was so terribly beaten that he was unconscious for a week and now suffers from permanent paralysis due to his stay at brother's home. Survivors of the institution recount how they frequently saw other prisoners who were beaten horrifically, then discarded and rolled up in bloody rugs, never to be seen again. There were church services every Wednesday and Sunday that were to be attended by everyone. Long Bible verses were recited alongside the Ten Commandments and the Lord's Prayer. But it wasn't just a church service, they also conducted something that the leadership coined the People's Trials. If anyone attempted to escape, and a few did try to climb the 7-meter tall perimeter fence, but they were always caught. As punishment for these severe breaches, they were then put on trial. This involved being brought in front of everyone in the church, where they were then severely punished physically. Afterwards, Pastor Lim Young-soon would tell everyone that this was all in the name of God and Jesus. They were using religion to justify the brutality and using both faith and physical violence to deter people from attempting to escape.
Or break the rules or anything of that sort. Again, it's not just the guards or the administration certainly knew and participated in these, acts.
Oh, of course. Yeah.
Like I want to definitely just.
Do they claim ignorance later on?
Yeah, you can't claim ignorance.
Well,
To this
I'm
level
saying,
of
do
widespread.
they do that
No,
eventually?
sorry.
Okay.
I mean, no, I don't remember them
Okay.
claiming ignorance per se.
Okay. Yeah, because that
You
would
will
be. That'd
let
be
me just put it this way, as a bit again, a little bit more foreshadowing. You will be very frustrated with how this ends.
I'm sure they all go to jail and get what they deserve, and they.
Yeah, how it always ends, doesn't it?
That's how it always goes with these cases. It's all happy in the end. That's how the world works.
And then they made Squid Game.
In Squid Game, yeah. Yeah, haha, Squid Game, this is what that is. Squid Game.
Wacky Squid Game theory, guys.
Upset at all the now I'm even more upset at all the tweets and stuff that were like, was Squid Game based off this real
Yeah. Yeah, taking this horrific tragedy and cocooning
I only brought it up because I heard other
topic.
people say it. Imagine being the first one to come across a story and being like, Squid Game reference?
Wow. That's wacky.
Oh, man.
Yeah, again, big thank you to everyone who suggested
TikTok.
this one for us. Really do appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks, guys. Prisoners would often see the makeshift graveyard behind the church, where there were multiple unmarked graves. A reminder of what would happen if they did something wrong. Reports suggest that approximately 650 people died at Brothers' home, though many believe that this figure is a significant understatement due to incomplete records and corruption surrounding the investigation. Yeah, that's like the record that only 3 people died at Chernobyl. It's like, yeah, at the moment of the explosion. Like, sure.
It is, but like, isn't it crazy that even this conservative lied amount is 650 people?
Yeah. And there were how many? 4,000?
Yeah.
That we know of, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably higher in both factors.
Both figures.
Documentation was bad, but 650 people approximately died at this facility. That is genuinely in my mind like a concentration camp.
Yeah, there's a quote here that says, one survivor recounts, people were starved, beaten, and killed, but their deaths were not reported. They were they just buried them in the fields. Yeah. Yeah, that's really cool. Okay. There are also reports that speculate that dead bodies from the facility were sold to medical researchers, adding another aspect to the money-making scheme that was in Brothers' home.
Yeah, if they could monetize every aspect of this facility and all their misdeeds, they did. Like they were making hand over fist money from all the evil shit that they did.
If there was an inmate that was particularly bad, they would send them to the mental institute side of the home. Drugs were abused by the facility to keep prisoners subdued. Unironically, that's where I'd want to be. If the option is doing a labor camp, lifting bricks, or just being dosed out of my mind all day.
Yeah, 100%.
Send me over there.
100%.
Let me hit some of that good. Let me just forget, yeah.
You've got to make the abuse more manageable.
Send me to space, yeah.
Yeah. Although, like, if they overdose you or whatever, give you a bad reaction, which they probably did on purpose.
Well, I imagine they're not just giving people opioids and stuff. There's probably some chemical concoctions that ruin you forever. I'm just saying that if it's being beat to death and thrown in a field or just high, whatever. Sexual abuse was also a daily occurrence. That's so cool, Jackson. That's so cool.
Yeah, big warning here, guys.
Okay. The people on either side of this hotel. Someone's pushed up against one of these walls right now, like
they're listening through your wall, like, what is this
guy what
talking about? Oh my god. You're gonna get a call. You're gonna get like reception.
I'm gonna see cop cars pulls up in a second, like, I wonder who those are for.
Everyone in the surrounding rooms is just crying with their pillows over their ears. Please make him stop. I never want to listen to Red Thread again.
This abuse was so violent that it caused permanent injuries to the prisoners. Inmates suffered at the hands of their abusers daily for years. It's difficult to describe how horrific the sexual abuse in the facility was. Survivor Sho Sing Woo has told the story of his first night in the Brothers' home, where he was stripped of his clothes by his platoon leader, washed in cold water, and told to lie in their bed naked, where he was then sexually assaulted and to this day, this still understandably haunts the many survivors. An article from CNN World recounts how Han Jong-sun, another survivor, is still unable to sleep without the lights on. There are many of these testimonies from those in prison and brother's home, and all of them incredibly harrowing. Yeah, it's very like concentration camps, yes. But also like what was that? The Japanese group during the war, 731.
Oh yeah.
It's like anytime you have a group of people that, like, historically, anytime you have a group of people who are being kept by another group of people, and the group being kept is viewed as subhuman, right? Like they're a problem, they need to be gotten rid of. It immediately becomes a breeding ground for like sexual violence, physical violence,
tribalistic behavior. Like all morals and ethics go out the window as soon as you are able to dehumanize the other person and not think of them as worthy of, the same kind of respect that you afford yourself. Like history has proven that you're able to, most people are able to commit enormous atrocities.
Yeah, it goes back to like caveman think. It's like me capture you, me fulfill base desire, like sex, violence, stuff like that. People just become like apes. It's
You don't want to believe it, but it's true.
Yeah.
What was the Japanese one? It was
Unit 731.
Yeah, Unit 731, is that it?
Yeah. Unit 731. I made a video about them, but it was the front was that it was supposedly an experimentation unit during the war. When it was as much a scientific unit as the concentration camps, because people will still say that a whole BS about like, oh, well, in the concentration camps, they were doing like medical advancements and knowledge. And so people, what's that? I think Boogie said this.
Quote. Yes, the Boogie quote. I knew this was coming. My Boogie alarm went off in my head.
The Holocaust was bad, but some really cool stuff came out of it. Like,
at least something good came out of it.
At least something good came out of it. He's not the only one. A bunch of like, quote unquote, political streamers or whatever have said it. The science they were conducting was like, if someone freezes to death, they die.
Yeah.
Like that was like,
I think the Unit 731, I might be thinking of something different, but I think the Unit 731 one, there was one where they like conjoined like babies together or something like that.
That was Unit 731. There was a bunch of they took people to the mountains and stuff, and they like froze people's limbs and then like broke them to see how their body would react. There was a lot of like blood transfusions with animals and people being skinned to see how skin regrows and stuff like that. Similar things were happening in concentration camps. A lot of the concentration camp stuff was like weapons testing, or like the quote-unquote hypothermia testing was timing how long it took someone to freeze to death. Which, wow, big advancement in science, guys. If someone gets cold, they die.
Boogie would think that would be life-changing.
Or
like, God, they did that.
There was like Mingala did a bunch of experiments with twins where like
that might be what I'm thinking of.
Yeah, where organs like limbs would be removed from one and attached to the other to see how they would develop and stuff like that. Like none of it actual science. Science is used as like the facade to do like torture methods and stuff. But it's for the good stuff came out of it. Whatever. I'm not clowning Boogie specifically. It's just a stupid take. A lot of people you can, but it's just a stupid take. A lot of people
specifically. I hate that take. It's just like why even make that take as well? Like what's the point? Why are you fence-sitting
to be a contrarian? That's what all of them do. It's like, well, good always comes out into bad. Take a really bad thing.
I think it's they want to come across as intellectual, and they take the most.
That's exactly what it is. It's like I've actually considered this thing, and it's actually different. Like this thing that we all universally agree on is this way because duh. I'm actually thinking beyond you people.
Yeah,
and it's actually
level
different.
IQ.
This isn't the only example it's used with. People do it with all kinds of political stuff. It's like, no, maybe something that all of humanity has agreed is bad. 100% outright doesn't need to be re-examined. Maybe we don't need to reinvent the wheel. Maybe we were right on that one.
Yeah, we already came to this conclusion a long time ago. It's fine to leave it as it is.
Maybe just don't say anything. Anyway, the rumor. Okay, so now that's all the stuff that was happening. That's a summary of the stuff that was happening inside of the facility. Let's talk about from the outside looking in. So, as many of the children that were held at the brothers' home were incorrectly and wrongfully declared orphans, there were families that were actively looking for their now missing children. That's
Yeah, like
I'm not laughing because it's
families?
funny. I'm laughing at the absurdity of it. Like,
The
entire
scale of
towns are
this.
like, have you seen anyone under the age of 16?
Yeah, where did my child go?
Week?
Where did your child go? Like,
Oh.
it's crazy. It's a crazy. The scale is kind of insane when you think about it.
Oh. There were rumors circulated in the community by the mid-1980s about the facility due to some prisoners who were able to escape. This news reached some families of those who were essentially kidnapped. For example, a survivor named Choi Sang-woo, who has, along with a few others, been vocal about his experience and abuse that they endured in the home. The only reason he was freed along with his brother, who had also been taken away to the home sometime after him, was because his grandmother had heard about the brothers' home rumors and urged their father to go investigate if Choi and his brother were there. At first, they declined to communicate with the father, but finally they agreed to release Choi and his brother. They were released, Choi aged 19 and weighing only 37 kilograms, and his brother aged 17
God.
and weighing only 35. Convert that to pounds for me real quick. Isn't that like 70 pounds or something like that?
I don't know what it is specifically, but that is extremely underweight.
Yeah.
Like probably like 50 kilograms is underweight for that age. 60 kilograms is like on the edge.
That's
So
77 pounds. Wow. Man.
That is insane. The level of malnourishment there.
Well, okay. The stigma, shame, and memories had haunted the survivors after they escaped did not leave them. The facility claiming the lives of many beloved even after their release. Choi's brother took his own life in 2009.
Yeah.
Those in charge of the brothers' home tried to make the place look good from the outside, as religious donors and adoption agencies would frequently visit the facility. I assume that when these dignitaries arrived, they were greeted with shows the children were forced to perform. Yeah, so like people who came to investigate, I'm sure were always shown a facade, right?
Yes.
It's not like random orphanages were showing up and just seeing the abuse and being like, this is fine, I think.
No, there was definitely a
certainly
show
fronts,
and a parade and a facade that was demonstrated to anyone who showed up. Otherwise, this wouldn't have lasted as long as it did.
Yeah, of course. There was a government promotional film. There was a government promotional film for the brothers' home from 1981 where they portrayed the prisoners as criminals. It involved Lim Sung-soon, wife of the director, acting as someone who had been the victim of a violent crime. In this video, they try to portray Park and his family as a part themselves of the brothers' home community, where they would share meals with the prisoners and walk amongst them, almost as if it were a commune instead of a prison. It was obviously all a farce. While hundreds to thousands of people were suffering in the home, the family lived in a residence next door and lived wealthy. They would take certain inmates and force them to be their housekeepers and nannies, for example.
While pocketing,
Video
pocketing
where
thousands.
it's like these dangerous, destitute criminals, but I've decided to respect them as people.
Well, no, yeah, the video is like, I was, made the victim of a crime, but now through Christianity, I walk among
God,
them and rehabilitate them. Yeah, it's just.
Well, the devil can't scrap, but the Lord has won. That's so funny to imagine, because they lied on both ends. They lied about who was in the facility, and they lied about how they treat people in the facility. When in reality, it's like opposite in both directions.
The audacity of painting these people that they kidnapped as the true like villains and criminals.
What drives me crazy about these people is like, it's one thing if you believe you're on a moral conquest that you have to do evil. Right? Like if they made it would still be bad, don't get me wrong. But if they made a video where it's like, homelessness is a problem. If South Korea is going to grow strong, you got to break a few eggs to make an omelet. At least then they'd be honest about their evil, right? But the fact that you have to make up stories for your supposed moral expedition, it's like, well, now you just know that you're being evil for money. There's no facade of like, God told me to do this or anything like that. It's like you're just a horrible person, and you're a horrible person. There isn't even an illusion about it. Yeah.
No, they're not trying to go at this from any moral angle, like that they earnestly believe themselves. This was just genuine 110% greed.
Yeah, like there's so many times where like evil things have been done in history, but the people that perpetrated them thought like, well, I think I'm helping someone. But this wasn't even that. This is just it's ridiculous.
I mean, this is a hard one to even like think of a situation where someone would earnestly believe they're doing it.
I mean, if you honestly thought that this would require the people involved to not know 90% of the people were abducted. If you honestly thought homelessness was such a problem it would destroy your country, then it's like, I don't like the way we're treating them, quote unquote, but we got to get them. Like, at least then there would be some like mask people are putting over themselves to justify it. But it's not even that.
There's no redeemable angle that you could take when you factor in the abuse and stuff, though. Like that.
Exactly. That's what I'm. Yeah. Once you get to the point where it's like, and now that we've got them off the street, we have to abuse them and like hurt them. So it's
why?
like, okay, well, yeah. It's like,
why?
What? They're not what? Like, what?
To be honest, it doesn't even really work in a greed sense. Like, what are you getting from this other than some sadistic pleasure?
That's what I mean. It's like people become apes. If they're told that they can hurt another group of people and there's like these other people should be hurt, it's just like Grug want thing. Grug want to hurt. Grug want sex. Whatever. It's monstrous.
Yeah, like I was saying with the greed thing, like they're already making the money with them being there already and forcing them to do manual labor. Like,
the beating it is entirely complimentary.
Yeah,
you're not getting anything out of that.
That's just because they have caveman sadistic desires. Yeah. Really.
So, if that wasn't bad enough, this next section is titled Human Trafficking and Embezzlement.
Do you want to take it?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Survivors remember how adoption
I don't want to read it again.
Survivors remember how adoption agencies and families would frequently visit the facility and children would just disappear overnight. But in 2019, the Associated Press released an article exposing how the Brothers Home used international adoptions to also make a profit, essentially selling stolen children. Through looking at documents,
when you thought you like couldn't get worse,
child trafficking,
you realized that they were selling children. Selling children.
I mean, it's like whatever. At this point, it's like, well, you were already abusing them. I guess you don't care if they get shipped out to happen somewhere else.
It might honestly be better that they were sold. Honestly, other than like rather than
maybe the human traffickers are nicer to them than this one.
Yeah, which is such a sad. Man.
Through looking at documents from officials, direct evidence of 19 children being sent away or sold was discovered. And direct evidence also points to a further 50 or so children also being adopted out of the country by unknown figures. Due to poor documentation and potentially underground involvement, there is no concrete evidence. Children are believed to have been mostly sent to America, Europe, and Australia. During this time, adoptions brought in around $20 million to Brothers Home. Oh, nah.
Wait, that's like what? That's $1 million per child confirmed that was sold. The number would have had to have been way higher for them to get that.
That isn't there's no way that children adopted for non-explicit means cost that much, right?
Yeah, this had to be underground stuff, like very evil things. Like genuine human trafficking instead of
internet.
Adopting them to
the reason
families.
You pay that much is for the secrecy. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
International couples looking to expand their families and welcome adopted children were potentially unaware of the horror condition these children came from. On the other side of the coin, the real families of these children had no idea where their child went or ended up.
There's no punishment satisfactory for these people.
Yeah. With the industry being so profitable at the time, agencies wanted orphanages and hospitals to pressure possibly unwell or who they deemed unfit mothers to give up their children for adoption. One of the platoons within the home was for young adoptable children, described internally as a nursery. Other prisoner children were forced to work in there, not just looking after the area in terms of cleaning and maintenance, but they would also write notes to international couples and agencies where they would have to write thank you notes for donations and gifts and such, things the prisoners never saw themselves.
Yeah, there was in the documentary I watched, there was a testimonial from one of the survivors who basically talked about how they forced him to write letters essentially begging a lot of these, charitable organizations for more aid, essentially. And the reason why they chose the children to do this, obviously, was because children's handwriting looks a lot more innocent and easier to convince people to, send aid and stuff. And then obviously they never saw any of the aid. That was all pocketed by the administration.
A survivor who worked in the nursery, Lee Shea-Sick, said that he would come in some mornings and dozens of children would have vanished overnight, sent off to their new families. The brothers' home would receive compensation for children from agencies they worked with, like the Eastern Social Welfare Society, at the time called the Korean Christian Crusade. They would send $10 a month for each child at the facility in 1972, again providing more incentive to kidnap as many quote-unquote homeless children as possible. As an example of the human trafficking that was conducted on a large scale here, South Korea's Korean broadcasting system reported on a case of a Korean girl, Kim Yoo-ri, who was taken from her biological Korean parents and adopted or sold to a French couple, where she was then and by her French adopted father. Many of these cases have been discovered and investigated once the Korean Truth and Reconciliation Commission began investigating the scandal in 2022. Man.
Only in 2022. That's what?
2 years ago. Yeah, that's how long it took for some of this.
40 years where this has just kind of existed in the background of just the injustice, man. Just, yeah, like we were saying before, that's the only way they would have made $20 million is if they were trafficking these children to people who wanted that level of secrecy, which is obviously never a good sign.
Unfortunately, it's almost impossible to fully track down all the adoptions that went through at this time. It wasn't until 2013 when South Korea required international adoptions to go through the family court system itself that records of adoptions were better maintained.
Kind of crazy that it took that long to like kind of consolidate that and make that a legal system where you had to, document adoptions, maybe.
Many children are still searching for their original families in South Korea, and inversely, many families are still searching for their missing children. Despite the enormous amount of money from the government subsidies and welfare programs being provided to Brothers Home being advertised as money only necessary to fund and operate the facility, Park In-kin and his family embezzled this money for their own luxuries. They never ordered enough appropriate food for the detained inmates, never maintained the property to livable standards, never provided appropriate healthcare or hygiene options to the residents, which is what the money from the welfare service was intended for. Instead, all of this was pocketed by the family.
And of course, all these buildings, their houses and things were maintained and built by these prisoners as well. Yeah, so they got everything. To do a short recap, the family of Park In-kyun had multiple layers of their money-making scheme. Prisoners were forced to perform labor-intensive tasks, including manufacturing of items to sell and working on construction sites. They were selling children off for international adoption and receiving money through that process, human trafficking, in other words. They were receiving funding for their facility from the government and keeping most of that money for themselves, racking up a small fortune of apparently around 5 million USD at the time, which was an enormous amount of money in South Korea post-war. This made them an exceptionally wealthy and powerful family, and it was all gained off the backs of kidnapping and abusing thousands of children and thousands more, just people in general. This has got to be up there in like top 10 most despicable things you've ever read about, right? Like, if it was a tier list, this would be pretty far up there, I think.
Yeah, probably top 10. I've read about a lot of, like, really awful serial killers that just, like, it gets to the point where it's, like, subjective. What's worse, like, number of people or intensity to one person, you know? So.
Yeah, I always lean towards the scale of how many people are involved, how much suffering is spread across multiple people. Obviously, you can point to things like genocides and things like that as, yeah, up there, obviously, but yeah, this is heartbreaking.
Okay.
All right, we got this. We can do this. We can get through it.
So, after this, fleeing to Australia and the quest for justice. In August of 1982, the first legal challenge hit Brothers' home. A man with the last name of Kang petitioned the government and police to investigate his brother's mistreatment at Brothers' home. The Busan Bukbu police station set up a meeting between him and Park.
That's a very cute name for a police station. The Busan Bukbu. Yeah,
the Bukbu.
I like that.
Busan Bukbu.
Hey, we found some happiness.
Park then sued Kang for making false accusations, and Kang was sentenced to 8 months in prison. I didn't know you could get, wow. On December 23rd, 1982.
I didn't even notice this the first time I read this. So the guy who made the accusation originally was then sentenced to jail.
Yes. Yeah, the guy who said there was accusations goes to jail for 8 months.
Yeah, he goes, "No, you."
Then sends him to jail. Yeah.
Okay.
Why are you so concerned about children being hurt? Is it because you like to hurt children? Suspicious, I think.
Yeah. Projecting much?
Projecting much. I have depicted you as the virgin and me as the Chad.
That's like another boogie tier argument.
Yeah, anything you don't like, you're like, that's a boogie argument.
That's a boogieism.
Rumors had been circulating within South Korea about the human rights violations commonly happening within Brothers' home for some time. Eventually, a prosecutor in Busan by the name of Kim Yong-won set out to investigate Brothers' home after hearing rumors from a local hunter that a group of laborers were logging in a nearby mountain area while being beaten viciously by guards armed with clubs in 1986. He discovered the mountain workshop and took photos of the prisoners being forced to perform labor. This looks like an execution, this photo.
Yeah.
Looks like they're all being lined up to be shot.
Yeah, there's two groups of people, obviously the guards as well as the laborers, and yeah, it looks like the laborers are just like kneeling down in front of the guards. I think.
Oh boy.
Just in a random clearing in a mountain, it looks like, right?
Yeah. This was enough for the facility to be raided on January 16th, 1987, where authorities found foreign currency, including US dollars and Australian dollars, amounting to around the number of 10.6 million USD. Whoa. Over 100 inmates were interviewed, and they were found to be of sound mind and were brought to the home and kept against their own will in order to subject them to forced labor. Park In-gwen was arrested for embezzlement and illegal confinement. The court originally found him guilty of all charges, and he was sentenced to 10 years in prison in order to pay a fine of 681 million won, which is about $500,000 US.
Yeah, luckily they didn't just find $10 million, although I guess I would assume that would be taken, right? All that money?
Yeah, you can't keep stolen money. It's seized, and then you have to pay back out of what you owe. Yeah.
Yeah. Did they know that was stolen money? I guess that's the embezzlement.
Yeah. Okay. That's the embezzlement money. Yeah. So if they determine money is used for embezzlement, that's seized, and then any fines you have to pay back out of money they couldn't declare.
Yeah, but I'm assuming these criminals have a way of laundering that money and keeping.
Of course, yeah. But if you're good at laundering, the courts can't prove that the money was laundered. Right.
Yeah.
Unless they determine a business to be a laundering front, but if it's a legitimate business, it's virtually impossible for courts to prove it unless they can prove that the money that was going in was stolen.
Well, that's kind of my point. Like, I'm sure that these people had a lot more money stocked away if they were just keeping $10 million out in the open.
Yeah, I'm sure he could pay a $500,000 fine for sure.
Yes.
If he had $10 million in cash, He could pay
Yeah.
a $1 million, $500,000 fine. Yeah.
Yeah.
The prosecution was put under pressure by the Chun Doo-hwan administration, which had wanted to obscure the case due to the bad look it had for South Korean government.
Oh yeah, I don't think you. So he's the court acquitted him of the daytime imprisonment charges and took 6 years off his prison sentence. So that 10 years in prison suddenly very quickly became only 4 years in prison. And only a few months later, on March 15th, 1989, they changed their minds again after another appeal, where they then dropped the nighttime imprisonment charges, which meant Park would not be held responsible for any imprisonment of those within the brothers' house and was only deemed guilty of the embezzlement charges. His final sentence was only 2.5 years. He tried to appeal this one also because
hundreds of people and get 2.5 years.
The audacity to then also appeal that.
It's insane to how this works in government's minds, because South Korea is like, okay, well, we don't want to come off as evil, so we're going to give the child murderer 2 years.
Yes.
Like, what?
Yeah, that's not evil. This is their way of like sweeping it under the rug. This is
their form of sweeping.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Whatever. So yeah, he tried to appeal that as well, but that was dismissed. Thankfully. Thankfully, it doesn't feel like the right word.
There will come a payday. Hallelujah. What a payday. There will come a payday.
You gotta have faith.
The prosecution was put under pressure by the Chun Doo-hwan administration, which wanted to obscure the case due to the bad look it gave the government. While all of this was going down, Park In-kyun's compliance, Pastor Lim Yong-soon had left South Korea, moving to Australia to build a new life for himself and his family.
Yay!
It's so funny to imagine, because the way it's worded is he's just like, I've been meaning to get to the beach. We really do for a vacation.
Gonna go to the beach and sip on Mai Tais.
Yeah.
Damn it.
A Korean Presbyterian church in Swidney welcomed Lim with open arms.
Did you say Swidney? Swidney?
Oh, did I say Swidney? My bad.
Yeah, what?
I know better. I know better on that one. I know better.
Yeah, what the?
It might be Australia, but I know that.
Swidney.
That's sure. I think I was reading Presbyterian. I was thinking
right. There's a Y in
and
that.
like I went, well, there's not, but my brain was acting like there was for some reason.
Well, we can call it Swidney from now on. That's
okay. A Korean
cool.
Presbyterian church in Swidney. Welcome. Oh no, that's what it was. The word after is welcomed. So my brain was switching into welcomed. A church in Swidney welcomed. Yeah. That's what it was.
Okay. That still doesn't make sense to me, but hey, if it makes sense with you, that's fine.
Having no idea of his past life, they sponsored him and insisted in him getting a permanent resident visa. The elderly couple that took him in, Margaret Song and Peter Yu, now deeply regretted letting him into their lives, home, and church. Peter Yu is quoted as saying, when he was preaching, he was really giving it his everything, just so he could get his permanent residency visa from the church. So we were duped.
Yeah, I don't lay any blame at them. They were just like...
Well, I mean, they didn't know. They just thought it was
sound like good
pastor family
good
from
Christian.
Korea. Yeah,
good Christian people. They didn't know about these crimes.
Bad people take advantage of good people all the time. Yeah. It's not their fault. When Park In-kyun was released from prison, he immediately went back into the social welfare business in Korea. And despite his convictions, applied for and was granted a visa to travel to Australia often to visit his family.
How? Is there no process
they
where
let him back into the
visa investigates?
Business?
Well, he even with these like minor charges, he was still in prison for 2 years. Why did we let him in the country?
Well, you let him in your country. I'm saying that Korea let him keep running social welfare.
Well, that too, yes. It's across the board from both countries here. It's like, what were they even looking?
Because they dropped the charges for everything else, but it's like you are officially, federally convicted of embezzlement. You can now go back into welfare programs.
Yeah, embezzling in the social welfare business.
I guess he got off on charges that pertain to the deaths of hundreds of people. So I don't know why this.
I don't even think he was charged for that. I think he was literally just charged for what was it, imprisonment? Yeah, nighttime imprisonment and daytime imprisonment. I don't know why there's a distinction between the.
Hey, well, Casey Anthony's a TikToker now, so I guess I shouldn't be surprised by anything that happens.
God, the world is frustrating. The world is so frustrating.
Mm-hmm. She's a legal advocate, don't you know? You have to take her seriously.
What is she doing? What is Casey Anthony
She's a legal
doing?
advocate. She says she's a legal advocate.
Well, to be fair, she did get away with it, so he would be
She
a pretty
advocated
good
pretty
legal
good
advocate.
in that legal sense, yeah.
Really an expert.
There was also the creation of the Siloam facility after the closure of the brothers' home. The intention was very much similar, providing a home to care for vulnerable individuals, many who were previously at the brothers' home. The name Siloam is a biblical reference for healing. The facility of Siloam was not run by Park In-kyun, but his son Park Chun-kwang, who involved in the financial operations related to the facility as he stayed in the social welfare field.
I don't understand how they could possibly stay within this field. Is there absolutely no oversight? Like, I could just go out there right now and say that I'm a social worker, or I could create a social welfare, facility.
There will come a payday, hallelujah, what a payday.
Spoiler, there won't, sadly.
Park Chun-kwang was not involved in daily operations, but his duties included diverting funds meant for the facility. As you can guess, the money did not go to its intended place, and he instead embezzled funds from his facility as well for their family's financial gain.
Who could have seen that coming, huh?
It's crazy. Wow, it's almost like there were no signs of this at all until it happened. Park and Lim opened their own church in Swidney in 1990, built from the embezzled money from Brothers' home. While Lim had left Margaret and Peter behind, he ended up becoming a senior figure in the Korean Presbyterian church scene in Australia. Eventually,
Margaret and Peter speak about how as soon as he got his citizenship visa or whatever through them, he basically left their church immediately and just started his own one.
Yay. Eventually, the whole family moved over to Australia. Park, his wife, Pastor Lim, his sister, and her husband, and their daughter and her husband. 5 years after establishing the church, Park registered the business name Jobstown in Australia, going on to purchase a golf driving range and sports complex for $1.4 million. The site is located in a suburb of Swidney called Milpera.
They still had millions of dollars. Where did that money come from? Obviously from embezzling in these social media, social welfare.
The church was very good to them.
Literally selling children, and they kept the money.
There will come a payday. Hallelujah. They didn't stop their abuse once they came to Australia. Just the idea of being able to murder kids, and now you own a golf resort.
It's mind-blowing. How is there no justice?
They didn't stop their abuse once they came to Australia. They brought over previous prisoners of the... Wait.
They were smuggling in people.
Hold on. Wait. Okay, they come to Australia. Where they would work the family on the sports complex illegally 6 days a week, dawn until midnight. They worked for no money and continued to get beaten if they did something wrong. Limbo Kien was brought over, was only ever paid $160 total after working there for around 8 years while regularly being beaten by Park whenever he would visit the site. Lim Bong-kyun says, "He used a golf club to ruthlessly beat me. If I was in Korea, I would have just run away. But if I left his place, I had no money to go anywhere. Where would I go?" So I understand being beaten by someone and not being able to leave, but in Australia, I feel like you could just go to someone.
Go to the police.
But
if he's being kept on the facility.
I mean, obviously he had these people so mentally conditioned.
Yeah.
But
why even pay him $160 then? I feel like that's just more.
I don't know. Maybe they
almost
around some legality or.
Yeah, but it's almost more insulting than just paying him nothing.
How did he go to jail for 2.5 years and then still get people that were in Brothers' home to come to Australia? How did he find them to kidnap them? Because they all would have been released, and the state.
Well, like you said, I'm sure there was some level of conditioning where some people from the facility still.
He probably just told them come with me to start this, and then just start abusing them there.
Yeah. And they might not have been abused over, and they might have been some of the lucky few who weren't abused over in the brother's home facility, so they felt some level of like trust with him. Maybe that's all conjecture. I don't know.
2014, Park was arrested again alongside with his son for their embezzlement involving the Siloam facility. Park was sent to prison. His son Park was sent to prison for 3 years, while the charges against his father were suspended due to his failing health and dementia. Park would die 2 years later. Some survivors of the brothers' home have been vocal about the justice they seek and deserve. The family that moved to Australia are still there, but they are facing a growing demand for them to be extradited back to South Korea, where they can hopefully be held accountable for the mass death that occurred at brothers' home. That would be great.
Can we get them out, please? Like, this is an actual cry for help from me.
At some point. No, I can't say that online.
Yeah, you say it, and I'll cut it out if it's too.
You're not going to cut it. I'm going to give you the footage of me saying it, and you're going to leave it in.
Okay, do it. What is it?
No, I'm not. You're going to leave it in. People, I
thought you were saying leave it in. No, I'll cut it if it is bad. What is it?
I don't believe you. I don't believe you.
I need to know what you're going to say. Don't leave me hanging
I was going to say at some point it has to be like, look, the court, we tried the legal stuff and that didn't work. And I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, my imagination can fill in the rest now.
Yeah.
I mean, I agree with you. I want them out. I want them gone. I want them out of my country.
I mean, you can't murder hundreds of people and like abuse people and just like sit Mai Tais at a golf course the rest of your life. Not in any society that respects humanity.
I do not want to share a country with people that have contributed to
that. I don't want to share. Well, I can't say that either. Okay, we'll just keep going. Okay. Some survivors I read that one. Park In-jin's daughter Park Ji-hee and her husband Alex Min are the sole owner of the sports center in Sydney, apparently bringing them in over $300,000 a year in passive rental income. They did list the property for sale in 2019 for over $11 million, but it hasn't sold yet. Survivors and Busan officials want their assets seized and money given to the victims of their abuse. Given in combination, well, I guess we don't have anything in there that details the facility enough. In combination with the things I said, maybe saying where they're located is a bad idea. So one of those two things needs to be cut.
I'll leave that up to the editor. I think it's fine. This is all documented out there.
I just mean like saying it in combination with full names and what I said about them.
I'll take a more mellow route, and I'll just like genuinely, this is a cry for the Australian government to please extradite them.
The Australian government needs to get rid of them. Absolutely. I agree.
110%.
Park Ji-hee has social media accounts where she has been seen posting pictures from traveling all around the world, funded by blood money. How realistically though, how liable were the daughters and what happened? Like, sure, the money came from the father, but we don't know, how much the kids were involved in it, right? His son, sure, but...
Yes, but at the same time, she's still benefiting from it right now.
Sure, she's benefiting from it, but I'm much less violent against that than someone who actually...
I don't know how culpable hypothetically the children were in the crimes, but I think that the least that she can do, even though she potentially wasn't a proponent of the violent crimes that took place, the least she could do is then help justice be found for those who have been victimized, and part of that is returning the money to them, essentially. You know what I mean?
No, I feel that. Survivors have been protesting for years to expose the abuse endured. Numerous lawsuits have been initiated and public campaigns launched. There was a long-term protest in 2018 outside of the South Korean National Assembly demanding accountability for running and funding these facilities. Their protests include shaving their heads and fasting to gain attention for what they and others endured, essentially funded by the government at the time. News companies like Al Jazeera have attempted to receive statements from the family here in Australia. They have declined to give any interviews. Imagine that.
Yeah, they should be fighting for justice as well if they aren't culpable, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm. The silence speaks volumes. Yeah.
Yes, this is not like some conspiracy theory where they can just claim ignorance, I think.
Yeah. So after that fun note, a small step in the right direction was made in 2018 when the country's prosecutor general Mune Mu-il apologized to the victims directly. A larger step was made in 2022 when the Truth and Reconciliation Commission in South Korea recognized the abuse that happened in the brothers' home and how the military government allowed for this to happen during the 70s and 80s. They ordered a full investigation.
See, so there's no like, this isn't rumors or speculation or anything. Like, even
this is all official
government.
Government investigations. Yes, yeah. They recognized that the police would just grab people off the street and send them to the brothers' home, kidnapping them. They also recognized the fact that the inmates under the rule of Park In-kin were forced into slave labor. According to this article by VOA News, however, no one has been held accountable for their deaths, sexual abuse, and severe beatings that happened at the home still to this day.
As in, no one's been held accountable to this day. Not that those things are still happening to this day.
Yeah. The prosecutor who we talked about before, Kim Yong-won, who helped expose the House of Horrors, said that high-ranking officers actually blocked his investigation into the home from the very first day. Apparently, these orders came from military strongman and South Korean president dictator from 1980 to 1988, Chun Doo-hwan. There was a fear of international embarrassment as the Olympic Games in Seoul were just around the corner.
Yeah, so also you gotta remember, right, that so South Korea was under essentially like a military dictatorship at the time. And the leader of Brothers Home himself was a military official. Like, he had a history with the military, a fairly high-ranking history. So I think it's entirely possible that there was some level of, let's call it, collaboration or partnership between Brothers Home and the government beyond just the government kind of giving them, what do you call it, like, money through the welfare system. Like, they definitely seem to have halted any level of investigation or culpability in order for this facility to exist in the amount of time that it did, because it persisted for like, 10, 15 years.
Yeah.
So I feel like there had to be some level of government kind of protection, if that's the right word. And since they were both military, maybe they had connections.
Yeah. I'm getting upset. I might have to intervene. So the next to fit off this, the next chapter is called "Did the Brothers Home Inspire Squid Games?"
Finally, we get to the fucking the thing that inspired this all. Why everyone was recommending this.
It's insane that people saw it. This is like Squid Game. Is it a Squid Game reference?
This is just like Squid Game.
To circle
Reality
this around
is far more depressing than fiction, unfortunately.
Yeah. To circle this around to conspiratorial internet rumors, you've possibly seen this image floating around social media. A rundown, dirty depiction of a house painted in flaking pink and green decor, similar to the vibrant pineapple colors prevalent in Netflix's Squid Game.
Yeah, so these pictures were floating around and people were saying, like, this looks just like the set of Squid Game. It must be based on Squid Game.
Yeah. So the theory posits that Squid Game was actually based off the horrific events that happened in the Brothers Home, and it uses the following comparisons to both the Brothers Home event and Squid Games. Both the Brothers Home event and Squid Games involve people being detained in an environment with others, living side by side in bunk beds while being heavily monitored by guards. They also were forced to wear tracksuit uniforms, similar again to Squid Game, and had identification numbers. Is that true?
What do you mean? Which part?
That they were forced to wear tracksuits?
Well, that's what the picture has like.
This is going off the picture. Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
I'd be like, I would be surprised if they forced them to wear anything. They probably just took their stuff and made them naked. Yeah.
I didn't see any evidence talking about like what the actual victims at Brothers Home were forced to wear. Okay. I would assume there's some level of uniform, but probably not tracksuits. That's very like culty, I think.
Yeah. While a lot of the prisoners at the Brothers Home were children, there were also those who weren't, but had placed in the home because they were poor. Most of the, quote, game participants in Squid Games were homeless people. Is this picture actually from Brothers Home?
Oh, we're about to get there. This really annoyed me. Sorry. This really, really annoyed me. Continue.
games, quote unquote, were played in Brothers' home, but they were ultimately just sadistic punishments. One was the motor vehicle game, where one platoon leader would yell out a direction like left indicator, and then they would hit the prisoners in the left eye so hard it would swell, bruise, and become red. During these games, prisoners would be left with cuts, bruises, and broken teeth. So wait, they would just be
very fun games.
Like left, and then punch them in the left eye?
Yes. I guess like leaving the bruising makes it look like their left eye was now a car indicator.
Okay.
Very fun games. Very imaginative.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Another game was called Hiroshima. Inmates were forced to hang upside down from their bunk beds for hours on end, usually from evening until early morning around 1 a.m. Many children's faces would swell and become red from the blood rush, and some even collapsed. If they collapsed, they would suffer from the fall and then be beaten by platoon leaders for failing the game. What?
What was...
They just make them hang upside down?
Yeah, like bats. Why is it called Hiroshima? There's no note in here about why it's called Hiroshima.
I don't know.
I don't really get the connection.
So while these comparisons may seem apt and the picture may seem to paint a convincing argument that Squid Game was at least partially inspired by the events of Brothers' home, people online did some digging. It seems that the above photo is actually AI. Of course it is. It came from the Turkish artist City. No, is he an artist or does he use AI?
I mean, but yeah, I don't know. A Turkish account.
His name is City Hermit AI.
Yeah, maybe he's AI.
Let me look at
Maybe he's not real.
Yeah, okay, so not an artist, someone who punches notes into a computer and then lets a machine steal other artist work. Hermit AI.
So this person created these AI images of this set, and then like news accounts or whatever picked this up, Twitter accounts or whatever, picked it up and said, Squid Game was inspired by this.
Wait.
This is all based
Hold on.
off.
What is the person that originally said it was Squid Game? City Hermit AI?
I don't think so. I think he just posted the pictures and then...
Okay, so he just posted a picture and then someone else took the picture and attached the story. Because I don't care so much about, like, sure, AI's cringe and all that. I don't care so much about someone generating the image. I care about whoever tried to tie...
spreading falsehoods.
Yes, yeah. Knowingly, like, making up a lie for clicks. Like, was that...
I don't think that was him.
Okay.
Don't know for sure.
Okay, that slightly lowers my...
But someone still did. Someone just took these pictures and ran with started spreading the rumor that Squid Game was based off, Brothers' home, and here's pictures of Brothers' home, which weren't actually pictures of Brothers' home.
Hold on. The article says this. The AI images have been identified as the work of the artist City Hermit AI, who did not consent to having his work included in the viral post. Okay.
There we go.
So yeah,
and the viral post,
he's innocent.
I'm going to read the viral post out right now as well. It looks like it was shared on Facebook. It says, "Is this true?" And a wacky like emoji exclamation point and a shocked face.
A very
as
Facebook
all these
post,
and Twitter. I hate these accounts. Squid Game was based on a true event in 1986. It took place in a bunker in no man's land in South Korea, where people were held hostages and had to complete several games to survive. The host with unhuman-like thoughts was never found. The information could not be verified, so we cannot confirm if that is true. If you know more details, please leave them in the comments below. And then people associated this with Brothers' home for some reason. Continued to spread the rumor that Squid Game was now based off Brothers' home.
I'm trying to find who the original account was that shared it.
I doubt you'll find that.
I want to. I want to be like, oh, well, here they are if you want to go show your support, but I guess that's harassment and I shouldn't do that on YouTube.
Let me have a look. Let me have a quick look.
Anyway, so someone took these images. So what I was going to say is, like, if these images are real and if the tracksuit thing's real, then it's like definitely not inspired by the events of the show, but maybe the writers of Squid Games took some visual instances and was inspired by them to kind of draw a tie between oppression and bright colors and stuff. But yeah, it was all made up anyway. So whatever.
Yeah, there was no evidence.
It
or
was
need
entirely
to,
fictional, yeah. So
Yeah.
there was no actual connection before this grifter decided to tie a post into. Is this
Yeah,
true?
they took these pictures. Squid Game was trending at the time, and then they found an event in South Korea that they could then tie it all together to drive clicks. Just really fucking.
Okay. To add to this being debunked is nothing more than an internet rumor and fabricated photos. The director of Squid Game, Hwang Dong-hyuk, has said that the inspiration of Squid Games originated from his own personal hardships and is a reflection on the competition and inequalities in capitalism in South Korea today. Quote, when I started, I was in financial straits myself and spent much time in cafes reading comics, including Battle Royale and Liar Game. I came to wonder how I'd feel if I took part in the games myself, but I found the games too complex. For my own work, focus instead on using kids' games. I wanted to write a story that was an allegory or fable about modern capitalist society, something that depicts an extreme competition, somewhat like the extreme competition of life, but I wanted to use it as kind of characters we've all met in real life, end quote.
Yeah, like, again, to go back to the original theory, there was like so many other books and things that already exist, like Hunger Games, where the creator of Squid Game would have realistically drawn inspiration from, as he himself, talks about. I don't see how it is at all believable that he would have gone to, Brother's Home to source his inspiration when it wasn't like directly super applicable to the events of Squid Game either. Like, really, in terms of events. I don't know if you've seen Squid Game or not, but it's not really.
Oh, I have. Yeah, Squid Game's really good. I like Squid Game.
Same.
I've seen the first season. It was enjoyable. But yeah, no
yeah, that's
connection to
the Squid
story.
Game story is more like about capitalism, really.
It's battle royale, but it has like
Yeah.
real world like economics tied in, that they're doing it for money.
Yeah. Not kidnapping kids and human trafficking so much.
Yeah,
which is what
no
this
connection except for whatever this loser was trying to connect, which again was not City Hermit AI. He did not do it. Someone took his image and then tied it over.
Yeah.
Right.
But that answers the question of was Brothers Home.
Answers the question.
Was Squid Game inspired by Brothers Home, which was the entire reason we did this, which was a very easy debunk. I'll give it that. Very, very, very quick. So thank you to all of you who suggested that we, do this episode. That was horrible. A big thank you to everyone for sticking around and watching and making Red Thread what it is. None more than Isaiah himself. Thank you very much for, creating this show with me. I really do appreciate it, as well as giving me your time over the
proud of what
last
we did, brother man.
Year and a half.
Very happy with it.
Yeah.
It's been fun. It's been a ride.
Yeah, absolutely has. I hope that you can come on in the future soon again once, things quiet down a bit for you. Yep, doors always open. And very excited to
appreciate that, King. Again, to all you guys, thank you all so much for being part of the show. It's meant the world. Thank you for supporting us in this endeavor. I hope that you will continue to support it. Check it out, because I know I certainly will be. But above all else, thank you guys for our time together. I've really enjoyed it. So thank you guys for being around.
Yeah, thank you. I'd also really, very quickly before we end this episode, I would like to say, if you'd like to watch a more traditional and respectable, reputable journalistic recount of the crimes committed at Brothers Home, I highly recommend watching the Al Jazeera program titled "Investigating Slave Labor and Murder in South Korea's House of Horror, 101 East." It is a documentary containing first-hand testimonial about everything that happened at Brothers Home. I think you should watch it to really understand the depravity of everything that happened and listen to the people affected most directly, because there is testimony in there that is heartbreaking. Like I said, I did tear up during it. It was a very difficult watch, but I feel like it was a very necessary one overall. So it'll be linked in the description below. So please go check that out and just to understand everything that happened to the best of, our ability to recollect everything. Basically, I think that does a better job of directly showing the firsthand testimonies. And also, this episode's ad revenue will be donated to a charity that deals with homelessness in South Korea. I'll link that below as well afterwards. So yeah, all the ad revenue will go to that, just because I feel weird about profiting from something like this in general. So that'll go to a good source. Thank you very much, everyone, for supporting Red Thread. Really does mean the world. I love doing this show. I love hanging out with you guys and talking about all the weird stuff in the world, all the weird conspiracies, cryptids, cold cases like this, and things that have many questions. So stick around. Give it a shot in the future without Isaiah. You might end up enjoying it still. Thank you very much, and we'll see you next time. Bye, guys.
We'll see you next time. And I have to make one final statement for my time on the show. So I just want to underline every single comment I've made about any individual we've discussed or party affiliated with the show. These were all jokes. It was all satire and in Minecraft. And remember, kids, and the next time someone tells you the government wouldn't do that, they're telling the truth, because they wouldn't, because they trust you, and you shouldn't look further into anything that they do ever. That should cover all my bases. Bye.
The government are the good guys. Bye, guys.
The government
Thanks,
are the
Isaiah.
good guys. Remember it. Bye.
Bye.